Hey everyone, it's James. I'm excited this week to bring you an interview that I did with Lucas Lappe, a design engineer and co-founder of Doris Dev, a full suite product development agency working with brands like Open Spaces, Equal Parts, Lalo Strollers, By Humankind, and Great Jones, and recently co-founded Canopy, which is reimagining the humidifier. I've worked with Lucas in the past on projects for Doris Dev, and he's been kind enough to lend me a heavy helping hand on some personal projects. This is the first podcast we've ever done with an engineer, and we hope that, especially for students, it will shed a light on what engineers do and foster appreciation between the disciplines as we sweat the small stuff together. Also, we are excited to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Onshape. Yes, the CAD program software that I have been talking about ad nauseum for the last 2 years. Onshape is a browser-based CAD software, which means that you can run it on any machine. Laptop, tower, tablet, smartphone. Apple stands rejoice. A parametric CAD software that you can run on a MacBook. Actually, one of my favorite things to do is trackpad CAD, which is super intuitive and makes it easy to do CAD on the go. Onshape is like if SolidWorks got sent back to school to study UI design. It has a beautiful interface and has really smart features all baked into one. No more separate features for boss extrude and extrude cut. It's all in the same feature. It also has an amazing project management system called Versions and History. This way you can iterate, saving all your versions in the same file. It also tracks all the changes you've made if you screw up, which, knowing you, it will happen. But you can go back in time and restore to any previous version. If you run into any problems, they have an amazing customer support as well as an enthusiastic community of users. If you can't find a feature, Google it. If it's not in the software, there's a chance that someone in the Onshape community made the feature custom, which you can download. Now, Onshape is not offering our listeners a discount. Why? Because it's already free. You can download a free version. Actually, it's not even downloaded. It's just on your browser. And it's fully featured, and you can get right into modeling. Your files will be public, so I don't recommend doing client work with the free version. But for students and educators, you can access the standard plan free of charge, which means private files. There will be a link in the description of the podcast episode. When you sign up, do us a solid and put minor details into the company field. That way, they'll know we sent you. That again, put minor details in the company field. And if you'd like to do a trial version of the professional plan without having to talk to a salesperson, please email our contact, Kieran Murray, at kmurray@ptc.com. That way you can get right into modeling. Coincidentally, Onshape is the CAD package that Doris Dev uses. And Lucas said, and I quote, "We love Onshape, so give it a try. What have you got to lose?" We'd also like to thank our promotional partner, Let's Design Daily. They post amazing work from designers from all around the world, so check them out on Instagram at Let's Design Daily. And as always, join the Minor Details community on the Discord. It is an amazing, awesome, sweet, spectacular community of designers sharing their work, skills, experience, and opinions on all things design. I swear I saw Eve's Bahar in the chat once, but it might have just been an emoji. And please, subscribe and like on YouTube, follow on Spotify, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast, and do whatever it is you do on Google Podcast. And now, for our amazing intro by KYOSHY the Kid. Hit it! Hey, welcome to Minor Details. I'm James.
And I'm Lucas.
And I'm an industrial designer.
And I'm a design engineer.
And we are two people in different cities, sweating the small stuff. Lucas, welcome to Minor Details.
James, thank you for having me.
This has
I
been
feel
a
like
long,
we are on like a Brady Bunch theme intro.
yeah. Oh God, I would hate to do a Brady Bunch themed like podcast with that many other people. That would be disastrous. Just be talking over each other. But yeah, so this is a long time coming. I know Lucas. So Lucas is a co-founder of Doris Dev, which is, and I have it written up right here, a full suite product development agency based in New York City. Well, maybe.
Yeah, exactly, based.
Working with brands like Open Spaces, Equal Parts, Lalo Strollers, By Humankind, and Great Jones, and more recently co-founded a company called Canopy, which is reimagining the humidifier. And so I met you, I think through like Andrew Brace Makes,
That's
uh,
right.
and you brought me in for some rendering work, and I guess we both were at Quirky um at different times though, because I don't think we overlapped at all.
When were you there? I don't remember you from I don't think if we were overlapping, we never talked.
Yeah. We- I uh I was there. I was an intern. I guess it was fall of 2012 until, yeah, from September to December. And so I think what you arrived in 2013.
Exactly. Yes. I think I was there that summer. So
Yeah.
I like missed you by 6 months.
Yeah. But you were there. How long were you there for?
Like 2.5 or 3 years till the very end.
To the
Till
bitter end? Were you
the
were you
bitter
like the last cut?
correct. Yeah. So I was part of the last round where we all got laid off, but I was not part of the future Quirky iteration, which got
Mm.
bought for like $3 million out of bankruptcy. That those are like new Quirky people.
Yeah. Wait, are they still operating right now?
You can go on like quirky.com. It still exists. You can still buy a pivot power and another power strip that's in this has the same CMF as pivot power, but is
Right.
not designed by Quirky or anything like that. It's like a Chinese factory
Oh.
white labeled product.
Yeah.
So they still exist. You can still buy a Quirky product.
So are they making new pivot powers, or like not new iterations, but are they continuing to make pivot powers, or is it
From
just
my
stock?
understanding, they are. I think they still are making new pivot powers.
Yeah.
Um, but every year at like housewares, there's like five Quirky stalls because it's all like licensed products to different people. It's very
Right.
odd. It's so
Right.
weird.
It's maybe more quirky than the original. Uh yeah, for those who don't know, well, Quirky, if you don't know Quirky, it was like I mean, I always describe it as like a crowdsourced social media community, like members of a community submitting ideas, and those ideas being voted on by the staff. I mean, this like it was like this kind of democracy, pseudo democracy of product
Very yeah,
development.
exactly.
But and then those products got developed, some of them through to production, some of them only to like the rendering stage.
Yeah,
um but I would say, would you say the pivot power is like the most famous of the Quirky products?
it has to be. And I
Yeah.
think it was the most successful
Yeah. i
Quirky
should
product.
I should pull it up. But what was the first project that you worked on when you were at Quirky? Do you remember?
Yes. So the first project I worked on was I was an intern and my like manager was um, leading a project called Drift. And for some reason, Drift was this like very high profile product. It was a balance board.
Oh yeah.
Um, and there's pivot power.
Yeah.
So innovative, truly.
Yeah. So yeah, so the premise behind pivot power is like with a normal power strip, you can get sort of like crowding of the outlets so that like with different sized plugs, you can't always fit them in. Um, and so the pivot power is like this idea of yeah, pivoting the outlets so that you can fit all of your plugs um onto the outlet. But yeah, I mean,
Very
it's like
clever.
it's kind of it's I mean, it's a fun product and I always appreciated like there was a I feel like there was a big brand refresh that happened like like a year or so after I left
Mhm.
and I appreciated like the brand refresh of cuz this was the original one, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And then you can find like the surfaced one that's a little, it's like more pillowed.
yeah. Yeah, I always liked that a lot. But you worked so the first product you worked on was Drift.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's
Well,
see if you
that's
can
not going
find
to
it. Yeah,
pull up
drift. Yeah,
anything.
drift balance board. Quirky. Let's see what comes up.
There you go.
And so there we exactly. So it was this balance board, and the whole thing was it was going to be made in America. Um,
Okay.
so it was very kind of odd. I don't know why, but I inherited that program with those constraints, and I was a junior in school. And the product had some problems. There was like leaf spring that like centered the like balancing arm, and it kept on breaking.
Mm.
And then the lead engineer left, so I was the only person who knew anything about the product. So I was responsible for fixing the problem, and getting it to market. And I had this like leaf spring in the back. I designed this like this chunk of silicone that you just like pushed in, and it would just compress and would self-right that arm.
Mm.
And that was the first product I ever got tooled. It was like I remember being in on like a Saturday and getting these parts and being like, oh my god, like this is the first time I've ever tooled something. Like I had this idea, I made a prototype, and 3 weeks later we have like 1,000 of them in the office.
Yeah.
um, and it was such a cool, weird feeling to have that happen. um,
Yeah,
and
that's
then you're
awesome.
like, oh no, there's 1,000 of these, like I hope they work. Like there's like that realization. um, but that was the first project I got to open at Quirky. And then um, if you look at Quirky Vine Stop, that was the first like product that I got to design myself.
Yeah.
It's a wine cork, um,
Oh,
a die cast wine cork that like helps a wine bottle stand up on its side in the fridge.
yeah. I am okay. What was the name of it again? The quirky
Vine, yeah, Vine Stop.
stop.
Let's see if it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And I got a knockoff one. I was at a trade show, and like a company gave me like a giveaway, and it was a knockoff Vine Stop. And I was like,
Oh my.
this is amazing. Like this was like 10 years later also.
Yeah.
Um,
If I remember correctly, Adam Pascal designed the Vine
he
stop.
did. He did, yeah. And I remember this was he handed this off to me being like, it's a very hard thing to model. Like, good luck.
Yeah.
And that crotch, there are two legs. So to describe this, it's a cork
Oh,
that sits on a bottle, and it um, has two legs that help it stand up, and the two legs come together in what was known as the crotch area. Um, and that was very difficult to model, and it became a huge quality issue because this is a die cast aluminum part that then gets high polished. It doesn't actually get coated either. It's not anodized or nickel plated,
Hmm.
so polishing was a pain. And so polishing in that crotchal region became a huge quality issue later on.
I mean, isn't it always? Um,
Yeah.
that's that's great. So you actually did you say that you were working for Quirky while you were still in school?
Yeah. So I worked all the way through my senior year. So I came in as a design engineering intern. My I we had a co-op program at RPI, which is where I went to school, and so we did 5 years. So the summer of my fourth year, so I was going to be a rising fifth year, I did an internship at Quirky, and stayed on effectively part time. So I would work at Quirky Friday and Monday, and then I would take the train back up to school Monday night.
Oh,
Was at school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday night, I'd take the train into the city and be at eval Thursday night and would work Friday.
yeah. That's fun.
Uh,
Yeah, eval was where the company all came together to review the ideas for the week, and afterward there was much alcohol to be had. Uh, and I
the
mean
good old days.
it was great. I mean, for me, I was coming right out of school as well, and it was like coming into Quirky was like a dream come true for a student. Like I don't know how things. So you went to school for like mechanical engineering, or
Yeah, so I my degree's in mechanical engineering and something called design innovation in society, which is a completely BS name and makes no sense. Um, I going into school, I wanted to make products. I knew I wanted to do that from the ground up, but I didn't want I was like good at math and engineering and like that's kind of what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to build rockets and I didn't want to build like planes or jet engines or work at GE. That just sounded really miserable. So I wanted to make consumer goods. And so RPI had this program that was, and I didn't want to be a artist. I didn't want to go in from the industrial design realm and get a fine arts degree or an art degree. I kind of regret that now a little bit, to be honest. But I was not.
really?
I could not draw. That was not at all in my wheelhouse. I was like a tinkerer through and through.
Cool.
I could not have gotten into an ID program. I like had no portfolio, so it wouldn't have been a good fit.
Well, you could have gotten into Virginia Tech's program. They didn't require a portfolio.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
They would have taken my math SAT scores and then called it a day.
I'm sure. I mean maybe, but that's it's interesting though. I mean I wonder. So was there a particular product or like an experience that you had that you were like, I want to make product like there's like specific designs to me that are like, oh, that clearly led me on the path to being an industrial designer. Was there something that led you along that path?
There's something very specific, and it's like
That's
truly embarrassing.
can't
And
wait.
in not it shows like a total. It is this is who I am, and you'll understand me way more now knowing this. I mean, I always wanted to make products, and I saw products as business. Like my dad is an inventor and built a business around drug testing devices. And I was like, he's a doctor originally. He's effectively a failed doctor turned inventor. I was like, that's cool, but like,
Well, if you can't do invent,
yeah. Um, and so I grew up with like the idea of like, product businesses as like the core, like this is what you want to do. And so my idol was Ron Popeil. And for anyone who does not know who Ron Popeil is, he is a inventor of many products, but also the infomercial.
Oh, wait, he
So
invented the infomercial?
I think he's like credited with inventing the infomercial. But his products are like the home rotisserie oven thing
Wait,
and the
set it and
pocket
forget it?
fisherman. So he invented set it and forget it.
Oh my
Exactly.
God. This is the best origin story I've ever heard.
And it's just the exactly. Um, he is like the first like pitchman type guy,
Right.
and so I always saw product as like I idolized him for like designing products and building them and selling them and like building a business around inventing products and selling them. Um, and later, I've got into his background a little bit, and like he's got a pretty colored history. Like his wife got in trouble for hiring a hit against him, and it was like caught in like a sting operation to get him killed, and then they got remarried after she got out of prison. Like all this, like it sounds like he's like a crazy dude, but that very much describes like, oh, I wanted to make consumer goods and I wanted to like sell consumer goods.
Yeah.
Um,
That's that is great. I that story, I mean, there is something in the American culture that we love a good salesman. And infomercials are like they're made for entertainment. And so like I
yeah.
feel like when you found Quirky, was that like a light bulb, a GE light bulb moment?
I think so. I haven't thought about that, but yeah, like the stuff we were making at Quirky was infomercial crap,
Yeah.
effectively. I mean, there was a lot of QVC product, like a lot of stuff was on QVC. So yeah, it was infomercial crap. Ben Kaufman was this amazing salesman.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that's right. You're,
Yeah. Although I remember a few times when it really mattered, Ben would mess up the demonstration of a product for like the first time use. I think I remember being there live for the what was the egg yolk extractor product?
Pluck.
Pluck. So yeah, Pluck was like what was it? It was like clear plastic, and was it silicone or what was the rubber
Yeah, it had
piece?
like a silicone bulb at the top, and it would suck
Yeah.
out egg. It would separate egg yolks from egg whites.
Yeah, but like the first time like they unveiled it was during one of the Thursday night what's it called? You just said the term.
Eval,
Eval.
yeah,
And they brought out a bowl with an egg, and like it had been working all day. I think I had watched like Aaron Saxton do it just like over and over and over. And then suddenly when it mattered, when it was being unveiled to the world, Ben was unable to extract the yolk. But I really love this product. It was like I feel like there's this really thin line between like novelty and innovation. I mean, I don't know that I would call this like innovation, but at least like I mean, I feel like Quirky there was at least a sense of humor to it where it was like yeah, like we're doing innovation, but it's also like it's just like fun. It's also there's like a spirit of fun to the product as well, not taking itself
totally.
too seriously.
I mean,
um
Quirky. That was the best part about Quirky was like there was this. And the reason why I joined and was like so enthralled with the idea was Quirky was going to launch products no matter what, because the thesis was like we don't know what a good product is or a bad product is, but like we'll see if it sells or not. Um, and as a result, like they let a stupid 21-year-old design a bunch of their products that shipped. Like, and as a result, we were launching like 100 products a year at one point. Like things
was
like that where we shouldn't have been doing, but we got to do it anyways.
but that's like the startup mindset, and that's what attracts people to startups, right? Is like that sort of spirit.
Yeah, it's like the ship or die.
Yeah. And
But
there's
Quirky was like ship a product every week or die.
right. Oh my God. Yeah. Did you, so as a 21-year-old, like designing things for manufacturing, getting them shipped, are there any horror stories there? Um, like, were there any big flubs?
Hmm. I no, not at Quirky, I would say. Like there were definitely I mean, there have been a million flubs along the way and past and in the future there will be. Um, but I think the main thing about Quirky was like a lot of stuff just didn't sell.
Mm. But
Like,
like, did you for your work, did you ever put like, yeah, did you ever make any mistakes, or not like you made a mistake, but that there was something with the product that malfunctioned, something that you had worked on?
oh, 100%. I like I would this and like one example of this is um there is a product not to be named that has a lot of moving parts in it.
Mm.
It's got batteries, it's got motors, it's got lots of stuff in it, and it moves really fast. And of the hundred some parts in this product, we designed it to have this, one press fit pin that went in the product. And we had not had any. We, went through the EVT DVT stage, and those are the engineering validation phases, design validation, production validation, and we, tested all those parts, no problems. Then on the first batch, the factory, while press fitting these pins, used a lubricant to keep it inside the machine they were using to press fit. And as a result, lubricant got between the surfaces that were meant to be press fit together.
Oh no.
So, this one link in the chain that relied on this product working to find was responsible for many issues
Right.
down the line of this from this production run, and that sucked for sure.
And
Um,
so what ended up happening? Was there like, how did you even like how did they even locate that issue? Because I imagine to locate the issue was also just like an entire project in itself.
yeah. So I mean, we rerun all of our tests. We see that this product, as this wasn't actually failing during our reliability testing, it was because we actually weren't putting enough force on the head to cause this
Mm.
sphere fast enough. So once we put enough force on it, this pin eventually would slip out, or after a long enough period of time. And we ended up getting the problem. The factory reworked the units, but there were definitely users who got products that broke,
Oh,
which it sucks. It's like as a someone in product development, and my girlfriend gets to see this on, like, because we're all always testing pre-production units and, like, first batch units. She's like, oh, I shouldn't buy a first launch product, right? I'm like, absolutely not. You should not buy the first run of any product. Don't buy
yeah,
launch products. There's so many kinks. And it's truly part of just the product development cycle for a lot of startups, because if a product's supposed to last for 3 years or 5 years, a lot of these products are being developed in 5 or 6 months.
right.
So it can be very hard to do reliability testing in that condensed amount of time.
Sure.
um
Yeah, and that was sort of like the promise of Quirky, was just like lightning fast innovation. And there's part of me, and I've expressed this on the podcast before, and there's this like frustration that I have with UX UI designers, that like they put out their product and they just can like immediately like fix all the bugs if they need to, and like everything's fine, everything's good. But yeah, like you make a mistake on a product and there's like 50,000 units that all carry that mistake. And, what are you going to do? It depends on the size and severity of the mistake,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, oftentimes there's product in different phases of production. So you're like, well, we have a new batch arriving of product in a week. That product was made a month ago. We also have a batch in production that's going to arrive in 2 months. So
yeah.
like the batch after that, we're going to be able to make this change.
Do you just want
Yeah.
like a big red button on your desk that just like shuts down the factory in China? Just
I So it's very funny that like now that we own, so I can talk a little bit about Doris Dev and like how
yeah.
that, and like what, now that we also own our own brand, which is also which is bringing like to light client woes a lot. So
Mm.
just to talk through Doris Dev, we're a product development service company. We work with a ton of brands to help build their product as an outsourced product development team. So we have design engineering in house, project management, sourcing, quality control, logistics, operation, and fulfillment. We effectively help teams that are oftentimes made up of a business founder and a marketing founder actually build a product and get it to market.
Mm-hmm.
And in that world, as the working for these brands, building products in their vision, it's we're working within the constraints that they give us. And for instance, like we don't have the ability to just change their packaging design willy-nilly, or like, oh, like I don't like the logo doesn't look great there, like let's move it on the next batch.
Yeah.
We last month we launched our own brand called Canopy, which is a humidifier, which you mentioned, and I have complete control over everything on that product.
And
And
is that
so
good, or how do you feel about that?
let's just say packaging designs changed 3 times in the month and a half we've been shipping products. Labeling's changing all the time, colors get to change, different processes are being implemented. So so if you see that like purple one on Pure Wow,
This one?
yeah, that one we didn't ship. We didn't actually launch with that color, but a bunch of PR people got that as like a pre-production color, because last minute we changed our minds and didn't want to launch purple. Um, so
That was just once you had seen them in person, you were like, this is not the color that we want.
yeah, it's like too late. We only had so much press inventory, so
Mm-hmm.
we launched it and gave it to people, and people liked it. So maybe a color that we launched shortly.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, and I mean, one thing I'd like to do is connect the dots between Quirky
yeah,
and Doris Dev.
yeah,
Um, so Quirky files for bankruptcy. Um, everybody gets laid off. But what happens essentially, and this is going to be a really cheesy metaphor, is like somebody picks up a dandelion, like, and just blows on it, and all the seeds, like Quirky has splintered off all of these offshoots, including Doris Dev. But you also have, and our listeners will maybe be familiar with Visibility Studios,
yeah,
industrial design firm. Ben, and it seems like I was looking at your LinkedIn, you also did some stuff with like BuzzFeed. There was the
yeah. So
BuzzFeed Innovation Lab.
yeah,
Um,
and
yeah,
Eight Sleep has a bunch of Quirky alumni there. Um, Kangaroo has Aaron Saxton, who's
yeah.
leading their industrial design.
And Kate Valen, I
Um,
think, is there as well.
Kate Valen as well as a UX. Um,
Friends
there's got to
of uh,
Friends of course. How
A-
could I
A-
forget Friends of
Adam Pascal.
and David Sutton as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. David came on. Came on like literally right after I left. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I heard somebody who it's funny. I've done so much work for Peloton, and so much of Peloton, there's a ton of quirky people there, and there's also a ton of MakerBot people there. And I don't I think it was Peloton head of product Maureen who was saying she worked at MakerBot, and she was saying like Quirky and MakerBot essentially populated New York with design and engineering talent that has kind of created the startup scene that you have in New York. Do you think that's correct?
In entirely. Like, I don't think there's another product company in New York that had as many engineers or industrial designers as Quirky or MakerBot.
Yeah.
Um, and then as a result of them literally turning over 100% of their staff, um, for both of them, like within a year and a half of each other, or 2 years of each other, it made hiring for product people in New York really easy.
Yeah.
Um, and so as a result, you get like all these great product people in New York, um, and also in Hong Kong. So our Hong Kong office, Doris Dev's Hong Kong office is 10 people, and half of that is Quirky people because
Yeah.
Quirky had a 50-person Hong Kong team.
That's
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
can tell the story I like to tell from Quirky to like the direct line from Quirky to Doris Dev is Quirky was this crazy place where we just had to launch tons of products. And even though we spent a lot of money, we effectively had a fixed budget and we had to get really creative on how we made products efficiently. And we were driven by Ben Kaufman and this crazy system of making a very diverse range of products that were design driven, that were like, ID first, cool gadget, cool feature that didn't fit into the like normal product development of like find a factory, take what they make, change the color, put a different logo on it, and like ship the product. Like that's how most products get made in this world.
Yeah.
Um, and we, myself and a lot of the founding Doris Dev team got trained on, build products quickly, design you cannot fuck with. Like your job is to retain the design integrity throughout the entire process and do it really quickly. And when Quirky ended, the team scattered. I went to a single SKU product startup. The other team also did that. They went to a company called Raiden. And at that point, we launched, these products. I moved to Hong Kong to run product at an electric toothbrush company. And we launched these products. And then, after 9 months of being at these companies, they've launched their products. They're not launching a V2. What does the product team do? Like a product team still needs to help out along the way. There's still new POs to get placed. There's still issues that come up. You're still making running changes, but you don't need a full-time team. So we effectively took these two product teams, smushed them together, and used these companies as our first clients.
Mm.
And then we started taking business from new product development startups that had kind of by accident aligned requirements to Quirky. They had, really strong design visions. And they had to get to market really fast because at their startups, they're running out of money, and they've like raised money to investors saying like, oh yeah, launching your product really easy. Like if we can do it in 3 months. Like I know everyone says you can't, but like we can do it. So we're coming in, 2 months after they told their investor they were going to launch in 3 months and trying to get them to market. And some of those first clients Doris Dev had was Lalo Strollers and Great Jones.
Yeah.
And I think those are great examples of products of how the whole Doris Dev thing happened and just kept growing. And since we've extended our or expanded our services, and we've added more clients into the mixed health and build products.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to talk about the Lalo stroller because, again, the people in our community with knowledge of Visibility Studio and just, I also just had a baby and and we have a Lalo stroller. So I have some notes.
Nice.
But but no, it's a super robust, like great stroller and like affordable on the market because the market for strollers is like there's the super low end, there's super high end. Um but yeah, like so what was that process? Like how did all of that begin? Like how does a client find you guys and start working with Doors Dev?
So I mean, we're entirely word of mouth, effectively. I mean, we get referred clients by previous clients and other founders. A lot of the VCs send clients our way because they want to make sure their investments are sound. Um, and Lalo, for instance, came. I don't know how we got connected with the Lalo team with Michael and Greg, who at the time, oh, actually, through a friend who worked at Artsy, effectively. Greg was at Artsy at the time, still had his day job, had this idea of launching a stroller. Um, and we started working with them and said, strollers are really hard to do. They're really expensive, they're really big, and they take a really long time to develop. So we actually had this parallel development path. So they hired Visibility and they hired us at the same time.
Oh wow.
And we both started work at the same time. Visibility went through user research and design research and started designing a product. And then at the same time, we started finding factories who could make this stroller. Um, and what we ended up doing is finding a factory that made a great stroller that was not yet launched, that was very, very close to development to completion. And at the same time, Visibility designed a stroller that was very similar to this factory's almost complete stroller. Um, and so what we ended up doing was merging the designs together.
Mm,
And for effectively $50,000, Visibility or Lalo got a unique stroller,
yeah.
a custom stroller that's unique to them that no one else is selling. That has the design touches from Visibility and enabled them to launch on time and on budget. Alternatively, to launch a stroller would have taken 2 years, 3 years.
Right. How does one find a stroller factory? Is
It's
this an industry secret? Are you gonna reveal the secret sauce?
I A lot of it really dates back to Quirky. Quirky had such a huge supplier network
Mm,
that we tapped into, and an advisor to Doris Dev is the person who was head of sourcing at Quirky, who after Quirky went to work at McLaren Strollers. Um,
oh.
so at the time that we were um, sourcing for Lalo, McLaren had gotten bought by Good Baby, which is a big Chinese vertically integrated stroller supplier. They own their own their own retail and they own their own brands. It's insane. They're huge, and they own McLaren now as well. And so what they did is they bought McLaren, shut down all of the took business away from all of the original McLaren factories. And so as a result, all of these factories that were doing 40 containers a week or something like that originally are down to like 5 containers a week and hurting for business. So they're happy to take our orders.
Yeah.
If McLaren was still there, if McLaren was still around and giving them these huge orders, they would tell us to go away and like
Yeah.
wouldn't take our meetings.
Huh. That's wild. So
Yeah.
when you say that the visibility stroller was similar to the factory stroller, was it similar in just like larger features or even like aesthetic details? Like how similar are we talking?
So the product was always going to be a full size stroller. It wasn't going to be a compact or a folding stroller. So it was always going to be full size. The shapes were similar. The wheels were almost exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah. And but I mean, there were parts of the stroller that were like hideous, like so ugly. Like the foot plate was on the stroller was like insane looking. And so like that was like, and the curves of the handle bar were like didn't make any sense. Like
Right.
a lot of the buttons got redesigned. Like it was very similar, but there were a lot of like very ugly features.
Do you have an image of that by any chance? And
I
maybe you
don't.
can't pull it up now, but maybe after the fact we can put it in the video.
Let me see and see if I still have it. I probably have parts of it still.
I'd love to
But it's
see that.
um, but the soft goods were entirely redone
Yeah.
by visibility. So very early on, like the soft goods were always like a blank canvas, but the bassinet changed and the seat changed and stuff like that. But the soft goods and the parent organizer and that kind of stuff was all was never was not designed by the time we got involved with the factory.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm curious, I mean, maybe we can um get into some a different kind of conversation here in talking about working with industrial designers because so was your first exposure to industrial designers quirky? Like had you collaborated with any of them in school? Like was there an industrial design program at your school?
No, I wish there was. I mean, if there was, I would have snuck my way into it, most likely. Um, my first experience with industrial designers was actually at Hasbro. So I interned at Hasbro in college, um, and got to work with a bunch of industrial designers there on a few programs.
Cool. And what was that like for you? Was that I mean, you say you would have snuck your way into the design program. Was when you met the industrial designers at Hasbro, did you have that feeling of like, oh, this is what I should have done? Or
I I would say a little bit. Unfortunately, the designers at Hasbro were responsible for just like rendering up Nerf blasters in like a million different ways. So they were kind of
yeah,
like pretty beat up. But there was one industrial designer there that was like doing the like internal architecture on Nerf blasters. And that was like, I want this guy's job. Like he has like a pretty sweet gig. Um, but it was even there. I remember there being this push and pull or this like fight over the industrial designers want this cool feature and the engineers going, well, design it then. And the industrial designers going, well, hold on, aren't you the engineer? Shouldn't you work this out? And they're like,
yeah,
no, that's not our job. Our job's to like cost engineer this product effectively.
yeah,
And that's very similar to the world that kind of Doris Dev lives in as well, where oftentimes we get this distinct handoff from an industrial design team. It generally comes to a client oftentimes where we will work with a client who hits our books and says, hey, I just got this design done, but like I needed to get made now, and like my industrial design team can't do that.
Right.
And I think it's a bit of industrial design firms maybe not being as forthcoming with their handoff deliverables, and clients not always being not doing their homework and understanding that industrial doesn't mean factory in that
Right.
in the term industrial design. So we oftentimes get designs that are very preliminary from clients that said, okay, I just had this design firm do all this work and I want to get it made. And our first question is like, well, have you seen a prototype? Like,
Yeah.
do you actually want this made? Is like
Oh.
the most important thing.
And how often have they seen a prototype?
If they're working with, a good design firm, it is 80% of the time.
Yeah.
If unfortunately, when they're working with a lot of freelancers, it's almost never.
Right. Right.
Um,
What are you saying about
or
freelancers?
it's often, with the design firms, they put that into, part of their scope of work a lot of times. And, and unfortunately, it's just harder for a lot of other design firms that are pressed for cost, and they cost out the $300 or, $1,000 it's going to take to make a looks like prototype, or even a rough prototype, because it's so much easier to show a render, and everything looks good in a fucking render.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, no doubt. Unless, yeah, you make terrible renderings.
Yeah.
Which I've seen. But
have you checked out Render Weekly?
Oh, the
like
WEA
yeah,
KLY.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know of its inception.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it may or may not have anything to do with the minor details community.
I didn't give you guys enough credit. I'm sorry.
But no, I think that this is a really interesting topic because obviously we've never had an engineer before on the podcast. And I've always been curious. I mean, I started out at Quirky and there was a team of engineers there. So and then I went to Lifetime Brands where we had engineers. The ratio of designer to engineer was like 20-1, but it was still better than nothing, because Lifetime Brands, we were doing kitchen tools and gadgets. Like, it was a lot of it was using an engineer as an advisor to projects because nothing was that complicated. So I've just kind of always, my entire career has been around engineers, but I can imagine that there are other people that have never had that experience or that relationship. And even though I've had that experience, sometimes I'm like, am I approaching this relationship correctly? Like, what would this engineer be like so happy to receive from me? And obviously that's not like, that wouldn't be a universal thing across engineers. Like, some engineers might never be happy to see the industrial design, but I am curious, like, for you, what does a great handoff look like from an industrial designer? What does a great relationship with an industrial designer look like? And maybe even, what is a terrible like what's the worst kind of handoff that you've ever gotten?
I mean, some of the worst, I think, ends up happening in like vessels, so like primary packaging for liquid, or things that have to hold volume of something. Because kind of the worst, I would say the thing that sucks is talking to a client being like, hey, we love the design of this bottle, but we wanted to hold the same amount of liquid, but we want it to be smaller. And you're like, well,
Mm.
that doesn't make any sense. Like that's just not how it works. And so specifically for designers who were designing vessels or primary packaging, the size is your main job. Like make that volume look good,
Yeah.
um, and make sure it's in someone's hand. Make sure it can like doesn't tip over when it's being
Mm.
used. Things on that note, I think, are super important, especially in primary packaging. But the thing that we love to get is a client that has a handoff package from an industrial design firm with a color material finished like deck that like makes sense, where it's not a something that has to get wet that is wrapped in fabric or
So
or something like
thoughtful CMF.
thoughtful CMF that like makes sense, that is referencing somewhat similar products in a similar category, in a similar price point as well,
Mm.
and a designer who has built a prototype that has been effectively reviewed and approved by a client.
Mm.
And that prototype doesn't have to function. It does it. I mean, its main goal is to kind of get a green light from the client for all the A surfaces, and all the cosmetic aspects of the product. What we struggle with is when we get a program and the client goes like, I love it, but like I've never actually seen it before. And
Mm.
it's like, well, design's not done yet. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna have to spend a lot of time doing the design because you really have not approved the design yet.
Mm.
Um, and then, continuing on, we love working with ID firms throughout the whole process because we unfortunately have to make changes all the way, for cost, for timing, for a lot of things. We're kind of stuck between the client saying we want it to be cheaper and the ID firm saying like you're gonna mess everything up if you do this.
Yeah.
So I ID teams that understand, yeah, okay, we've got to make the product 30% cheaper. Okay, I get it that we can't make it out of, this cool material. Or we can't have it painted or it has to only be a in mold texture or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Do
that's
you,
really helpful.
yeah, do you think that designers should have contingency plans for those events, or do you think that like it's important for the design intent to remain a certain way until you reach that roadblock?
I personally think that it makes a lot of sense to keep the design intent as this guiding light, but under because there are so many permutations of a design that a firm can do that I think it's too hard or just too complicated to say that, okay, we have, the high cost, low cost, medium cost design here. Like design all three, go get quoting for all three, and then let's come back and decide. And then actually we're gonna throw away one of them and do another permutation instead. And you end up just like with designing three products at the same time. You can't
Yeah.
really make a decision. Um, I would say maybe just our alternative finishings, for instance, where, oh, I wanted to design part in, a die cast metal, but I'm okay with like vacuum metal plating it
Mm. Yeah.
instead.
Yeah. That makes sense. Did you ever have any moments, for instance, at Quirky, where you got into like a heated exchange with an industrial designer? And like, has the industrial designer ever been right? Like, I feel like I have this impression of like the relationship with engineers and industrial designers being like little brother, big brother, like and the industrial designer as the little brother being like, come on.
Uh, Oh, I mean, they really great industrial designers are amazing engineers.
Mm.
Um, and a good like David Sutton is such a good engineer. He was head of design at Red Antler. He's now a partner at Friends of, and I think, and he was head of design at Quirky, and he's always like this like big figure to me because I was like 21 when I was working with him.
Yeah.
But he is.
And he's also like big in stature
It's
and
true.
and Australian. Just
Yes.
just he's just a triple threat.
Um, he, I would say, for most industrial designers, when we go back and forth, I'll be right 80% of the time. With David, I'm down to probably like 55, where I'll
Wow.
be right in a battle. I mean, he's very good. Um,
So
so
that begs the question, what makes an industrial designer a good engineer?
I mean, going through understanding the constraints that a product needs to kind of fit through to get made. Um, for instance, I like to say that like that your role or your expertise is dictated by the people you have to talk to. So an industrial designer is speaking to users and speaking to a client,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of pushing those things together. A engineer is speaking to a client, a program manager, an electrical engineer maybe, and the factory engineers. So we're informed by that information.
Yeah.
Um, and then the factory engineer, is informed by like his project manager and the scheduling manager at the factory and the sourcing manager at the factory. And so it's really these zones, and an industrial designer that can get into out of the ID zone and make their way into the mechanical engineering or sourcing one, and understanding how stuff has to get made, they end up being really, really dangerous, I would say.
Oh gosh. Yeah, dangerous and just like they can actually put up a fight in a meeting with an engineer.
Exactly. Yeah. And their designs get better. I mean, like they end up thinking about it and going, oh yeah, like yeah, we can't do that. Okay, we'll change the design. It becomes a
Yeah.
much more level playing field.
Yeah.
Um, and we end up speaking the same language at that point.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I feel like I saw a lot of that at Lifetime Brands. I saw a lot of older designers that just like, they just kind of knew, they knew what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. And it was just, I mean, I think there are many types of engineers that are many types of industrial designers, and some are working for agencies where it is all about like design intent and like the PR of design and the beauty of the object and whatever. And then there are places, people working in-house who are so like, I mean, the Apple team is just so immersed in the process, in like within the factory process and things. I was talking to somebody who was an engineer at Apple, and like, I guess how they have it is, if an industrial designer wants something a certain way, then the engineer has to go to the ends of the earth and back in order to prove that they can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, um which is interesting. I don't know of any other place with that dynamic, but yeah, it just seems like the more that you can actually touch the product, you can actually execute amazing product if you're an industrial designer with that knowledge. Um, but
Yeah. And I think oftentimes it has to do with products only have so much runway to get made. Um, and if you're designing an Apple product for a company that just raised $3 million, it's not never going to make it to market,
yeah,
unfortunately. But if you're developing a really well thoughtfully designed product that has the constraints of, you know, a comparable product in that category, that fits within a startup's budget and lead time and all those factors, that product's going to get made. So it's a, I would say it's a cost benefit analysis for a designer who wants to make this amazing product. And at the end of the day, if the goal is to make this amazing render that looks so cool, but you may end up, the client may completely butcher that to get it made. It may
Yeah.
never get made because they ran out of money.
Right.
Or do you design a product that's more feasible, but like maybe doesn't have like all those sick bells and whistles with crazy texture changes and stuff like that on it?
Yeah, exactly. We, as industrial designers, we need to stop putting bells and whistles. Nobody needs that many bells and whistles. Um, but no, I mean, I think, yeah, I think there's another part of this conversation, and we're running up maybe against our time here, but the other part of this conversation, I think, is like the manufacturing side of things. And I'm curious, like, what was your first exposure to manufacturing? What, like, was it overseas? And like, was there any sort of light bulb moment that you had when you first stepped into a factory? Because I feel like in my career, there have been moments where like I get my first product back from the factory and like the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh, this is like a remarkable moment. This is like, this is going to inform the way that I design from here on out. Now that I'm holding something and I'm seeing the way that my design succeeds or fails based on the constraints. But being at the factory, what was that like for you the first time you stepped in?
It was amazing. It was in, um, I mean, some of the first, real, so I, went to small job shops and prototyping houses in the US, but, stepping in my first factory in China was wild. It was like a 30,000 person factory. It was like a sea of blue. And it was being around engineers who had worked on hundreds of products that have
Yeah.
shipped tens of millions of units, and were close enough to the action to be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, I guess there is a problem here. Like, let's go to the factory floor and fix it. Or let's go to like the injection molding shop and like, let's see what they have to say about it. Let's go open up the tool and see what's wrong. Oh, I see it. There's like, you take your calipers out and you measure the pin that's supposed to be making the hole. And you're like, yeah, it's this one that's messed up. Like, we're going to fix it right now. Like, that is something that when you get a part in the US and it's like a finished good, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't work that well. And you like have to pull it apart and see what's going on. That is like scratching at the surface of the number of decisions that got made before it ever made it to your plate. So, I mean, unfortunately, right now, I can't go to the factories, and normally, our team is in the U.S. engineers are in Hong Kong and China at least every 2 or 3 months per person. So, I mean, we're there a lot, but it's causing it. It definitely slows development down,
Mm.
and you're relying on different team members to be able to review and make edits. If you're in the factory, it is so fast. And when you're there with a designer as well, I mean, that's the best part because you get to work with a designer. They're there, they see the first shots out of the mold, and they're like, yeah, that texture does not look good. I made a mistake. Let's change the color and let's fully retexture the mold to something else. I was
Yeah.
wrong, or it doesn't look nearly as good, or oh, they've got another sample here that is in a different texture that actually looks way better. Okay,
Yeah.
let's change it now. That's something that you just cannot replicate sending samples back and forth or anything like that.
Yeah.
So any designer who has who is building a product that is going to market, go put it in your contract that you're going to the factory to do revisions. And if you haven't had the opportunity yet, like give them a discount, give a client a discount to get over there, or like do it at your cost or whatever. Like when I had the opportunity, I was like sharing a room with the client so I could go over there. Like it was like, I mean, I would
sharing a room and a bed.
The beds were separate, but they were close enough to be
you pushed
pretty
them together
close.
anyway.
Yeah,
You pushed
yeah,
them together anyway.
That built strong relationships with clients.
Hold hands while sleeping
Yeah.
next to your client. Yeah, I mean, that's I'm sad to say I have yet to make it overseas to a factory. I mean, my dad has a rotomolding factory in Reading, Pennsylvania, so I've been there a ton of times, and that's always like super interesting to walk into. And we visited a factory in school, like the Bemis factory. I forget where that is, but they do injection molding. Like they do the they do the Bemis stuff, I think, for the toilets, but they also did the like Target plastic shopping cart and like a Jasper Morrison chair
Wow.
and random stuff. But yeah, I mean, is it like you say you like you go over there and you're working with these engineers who have been like doing hundreds of products, spending a lifetime engineering. Is that a fun relationship, or are they stingy about certain suggestions, or are they open to things? Like what is that relationship like?
I it it really depends. And like
Sure.
I would say like being going just like your relationship with, the industrial designer or the mechanical engineer who's building the product, it is you get a lot more with honey than I don't know what than a
Vinegar?
fly swatter.
Or
Yes.
something than a fly swatter.
Like I when we spent a lot of time on this first project at this factory, so we were there every week, and like every time I went, I brought candy, and like I brought Snickers to the factory engineers every single time I went. So hopefully they would like me when I would be like, yeah, we got to like make this tooling in it to fix this. And so it would maybe push them over the edge to be like, okay, fine, it's Lucas. Like he's okay. Like, he's kind of a pain in the ass, but like, it's okay. We'll do it.
Oh my
So it's
gosh.
really like building the like relationships with the people who are working on these products so they care, so they know when they want to skip a step, or the sink in this part is like it's acceptable for them but it may not be acceptable for you. You can like push them and go like, we got to fix this part, like
Yeah.
this is not acceptable, or these ejection marks are real bad.
So what I'm taking from this is we should appreciate the quality of the product around us because it was only achieved through candy bribery.
Yeah, I think that's right. um
That's amazing. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like you want through relationships. I mean, I feel like I don't. I should probably be sending things to my clients for thanking them. Like I've never sent any like cards or anything. I've always been like, nobody wants to see that. But I don't know, like the relationships, the network, we've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast, how much the network is like such a vital part of the product industrial design experience. But yeah, little nuggets like that or nougats like that. It's just it's great advice. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. This has been such a great talk. I think one last question maybe, unless you want to talk about something else, and feel free to diverge. But I'm thinking about the students that are graduating and like maybe going to be working for engineers for the first time in their life. and how would you primer them for that relationship and that experience?
Hmm. I I think build a prototype. Like an engineer will like love you for building a prototype, and it will
Mm,
make that communication so much stronger.
yeah.
Um, and I would say, you know, most engineers are bad, and most engineers don't value design,
Mm,
and they want to make their work as easy as possible. Um, and you know, they are judged on, did a product work? Not was it
mhm.
beautiful? Not did they screw up the design or not? They're judged solely on, hey, did this product have quality issues or design issues in production? So they're trying to de-risk the design as much as possible.
Mhm.
So understanding that, and if you as an industrial designer can de-risk the design for them, that will save everyone a buttload of time and a lot of heartache. So if you
Yeah.
can say, "Oh, I want to wrap this part in metal," and instead of just saying like it, line wrapped in metal part in your CMF, like pull apart an existing product that has a similar metal wrapping and uses a similar technique, and an engineer will go, sounds good. They did it. We can copy it. That'll be fine."
Yeah.
Um, that'll save you a ton of time.
That's great. That is great advice. Yeah, so make a prototype and take apart a product that you can reference for what you're trying to achieve. Uh, do you think candy bribery also works with engineers?
Sometimes depends on the engineer.
Get to
Um,
know the dietary habits of
exactly.
the engineers
Observe.
you're working with. Um, well, this has been awesome, Lucas. I really appreciate your time. And do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
I mean, always plug in Doris Dev.
Yeah.
If we're looking at design interns, if you want to come work for an engineer, hit us up. Doris.dev is our domain. Doris.dev on Instagram. I will respond to messages. Um, if you, depending on when this comes out, get canopy.co if you're looking for a humidifier. Um, you're probably not going to be able to buy it for the holiday. But
Are you backed up on orders?
we, as of today, are probably completely sold out for the holidays.
That's amazing.
So
Congratulations.
thank you. It was in, I did not know Black Friday was such a thing. It is definitely a thing. Um, and if
By the way,
you,
did I see that Chris Jenner bought a canopy or did you send her one? How did that work?
Chris Jenner did get a canopy. Yes, she got one through through some of our celebrity giveaways.
Nice.
It was right in between a right before she said, "Oh, thanks, Canopy, for this amazing humidifier." It was, uh, well, "Thanks, Poland Springs, for your new sparkling water," or whatever. Like, I was like, "Oh man!" Like, Chris Jenner really, like, for us, she really cares. Um,
She was going to put the Poland Spring in her canopy
exactly.
tank.
Um, but yeah, Canopy's been huge. If you need one, I mean, humidifier season doesn't end until March, so um, get one while it's hot, or while it's cold, rather, or dry.
Yeah.
And DorisDevSwag.com. If you DM Doris.dev, maybe there's a coupon code for you that may bring down the high ticket price.
Yeah, and let me just show everybody what that high ticket price looks like cuz I mean, these are these are well sought after. This is the next wave. This is what all the hype beasts are going to be wearing down Canal Street pretty
Yeah,
soon.
watch out. Or we're gonna get a cease and desist pretty soon. So we'll see.
uh
Okay, dude.
awesome.
James, it was
Yeah,
great
so
chatting.
thank you so much, Lucas Lappe, Doris Dev, and Canopy Humidifiers. Thank you so much for coming on Minor Details. And as always, I am at I Draw on Receipts. So thanks, everybody. Peace. Sweet.
Good times, man. I'm like, I need to. The sun is like baking me right now.
I, I could see that. But I hope that was what you were looking for out of the podcast.
Yeah, it was a good. It was a good rant. Love me a good rant.
Yeah. No, it's I think it's there's a lot of valuable information in there, and I know like there are people that have been encouraging us to get like some engineers in here and to have that kind of conversation. So I think students are going to really, I don't know, I think it'll be eye-opening for students, especially because like to see the work that you guys have done that is like it's like sweet work, and they'll be like, oh yeah, like engineers can make things that are sweet, like let's be good to them.
Yeah, I mean, actually, something I didn't bring up, which I should have, is like, I mean, at Quirky, half of the engineers were industrial designers originally.
Oh yeah.
That like it is not this, we define it as like this distinct line, but in reality, like design engineers oftentimes come from, industrial design or from mechanical engineering. It's not either
Yeah.
or.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I'm still recording the Zoom, so I could still throw that in there, just
Throw it in there.
toss it in.
I think I think it is important because it's like it's not fair to pigeonhole engineers or designers into the degrees they got.
Mm.
And I would, some of the best design engineers are industrial designers by training. At Quirky, we had a bunch, and they were so good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
the like a lot of the ones that I knew, they were all like ex smart guys. Are you referring to any in particular? I knew like Nick Oxley, right?
yeah,
Was
but he was trained as a mechanical engineer and then got his master's in industrial design, if
gotcha.
I remember
Yeah, I
correctly.
think at
But
like
Laura Sink,
RCA or something.
yeah, um, yeah, he did. I mean, the Laura Sink and Jeff Groves, both industrial designers by training, both so good.
Hmm. And
Jeff
what
is now he was at Philips actually. He was doing like
okay.
real hardcore engineering at
Yeah,
Philips
and
Sonicare.
what made them so good was as engineers.
Um, I would say that their communication ability is like, and that 3D understanding of parts and materials and getting it done. I would say engineers too often get like hung up
Mm.
on some details that are gonna work out. They're gonna work themselves out, and they're understanding where the ID team is coming from, because it's really easy for the engineers to be like, no, we can't do that. Done. Instead of saying, okay, we can't do that, but we could try this out. And like with an IDI, like it's not telling someone like, well, you can choose like this color, or you can choose like this dog shit color that no one's gonna like. Like, well, I gave you an option, and like it's not really it's not an option.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they come to the table with those skills that a lot of engineers don't,
Hmm.
and they're oftentimes old. I think they're much more experienced because they've lived a life as an industrial designer and then lived their life as an engineer, so they've already had a lot of experience on both.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that there should be such a demarcation between industrial designers and engineers?
It's the not the I would say the work an engineer does is very different than the work a designer does. Um, while designers do sweat the details, engineer has to sweat the details for a really long time.
Right.
So, um, on average, a project at Doris Dev lasts about 9 months. That's kind of the kind of middle ground. If it's a simple project and it's a sprint, we're going to do a lot faster. If it's a more complex IoT product, it's going to take longer, or it has complex compliance, it's going to take longer. That product that took 9 months probably only took a month to design.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's you got an engineer has to be okay with this delayed gratification, like
Mm.
of, oh, I got this product launched, it only took me 9 months. That's got to feel okay.
Yeah.
um and an industrial designer often, I mean, because you guys are trained with quick iteration, quickly moving through products, and that unfortunately doesn't work when to go from a EVT prototype to an ET prototype takes 60 days, where there's just like a 60-day gap right there, or 45
Yeah.
days. And that really screws up the like design process of design quickly and iterate quickly and then wait 45 days to get something to come back. um, so I think it's a different mindset, and I do think it is helpful to have a the designers as this dreamer who are building something for the engineers to aspire to actually realize.
Hmm.
So I think that is very important, to divide that, or else you get like me, who's in charge of a lot of stuff at Canopy, who's like, it's okay, we'll make the box uglier and cheaper and smaller. Like, who cares, right? Like, there's no one to yell at me for that. So things like that, I think it's important to have someone to backstop against an engineer who's like, well, we don't have enough time for it, and
Yeah.
I don't care.
You
Um,
mean you mean you don't have Aaron Saxton advising you on the packaging and saying no, don't do that?
so yes, we didn't talk about Aaron Saxton, who designed Canopy, who did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Um, and I unfortunately was tasked myself with designing the packaging. And we went with a launch package that was beautiful and cool and had lots of colors on it and was way too expensive.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, extra space in there. So for our next orders, we are actually chopping our packaging down, and it's going to be as small as possible, because demand's a lot higher for air shipping inventory in, which
Uh, oh,
sucks.
yeah. Yeah, I also wanted to talk to you. I mean, we're still recording, so I'm probably just going to add all this back in. But how has COVID affected things for you for the whole supply chain?
I would say I mean, one, we can't get over there and like go through the development phase, with the whole team at the factory, making changes. So that sucks. That makes things a lot harder, and it does make things slower, and things get missed because of it. And there's a lot of missed opportunities because of it. Um, but the biggest impact that it's had, is probably on the logistics side, that we are air freight prices are 4 or 5 times what they used to be.
Oh my gosh.
So it's astonishing how much more expensive a product is to air freight to begin with. So a
Yeah.
product used to be triple the cost to air freight it. Now it's 15 times what it should have. It used to be to air freight. So that's had a huge impact on clients, and it's more expensive or fewer flights. So
Mm.
most air cargo went on passenger planes. So I flew to Hong Kong and back. There was like a bunch of product in the belly of that plane.
Mm-hmm.
And now no one's flying back and forth to Asia. So as a result, you end up with planes that are dedicated to cargo
Mm.
and they're not subsidized by passengers.
I see. That's
Um,
wild.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been the huge effect of it. And ports in LA, and actually different ports have just had problems unpacking inventory. So LA, for instance, is 2 weeks behind on inventory. So, or containers are just, it used to take 3 or 4 days to unload a ship. It's taking like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Is
So
there
that's causing problems.
right? Is there any like is there any optimistic sign like that things are getting back on track with this kind of stuff, or has it kind of been the same?
It's gotten worse. I think
Oh, it's gotten worse.
it's gotten worse. I think primarily because everyone cut their inventory forecasts at the beginning of the year because they're like
Mm.
COVID is ruin consumer spending, and
Yeah.
then it's like actually all these yuppies still have jobs and they're like now buying houses and filling them with like outdoor furniture and filling them with this crap. So as a result, everyone's like now shifted to over indexing on inventory,
Mm.
and it's caused like way more demand than I think people expected for cargo, for fulfillment resources. So as a result, it's going to be bad. And if I was on a podcast 2 months ago, I would have been like, everyone buy their holiday gifts now. But
Yeah.
if you have not bought your holiday gifts, you're not going to get them on time
Oh
by now.
gosh. All
It's
right.
scary. The world is going to be out of like we're going to be out of inventory of crap, and so
Oh no. Well,
it's gonna.
it's not going to be a good Christmas this year.
Yeah, there are going to be a
Um,
lot of shit plays for Christmas.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
well, yeah. Well, and one more question about Canopy. You said 9 months. It took you guys. It typically takes you guys 9 months. Was Canopy the same kind of time frame, or like how did that start with like a factory, or did that start with like how did it start?
it started in turn. So no, we didn't white label a product like this. Like we didn't start finding an existing product in market. I think we saw this as an opportunity to one. I hate humidifiers, and my girlfriend that can't. I'll give the pitch. It started as humidifiers being a product that people need and they suck. That
Yeah.
you've got to clean them all the time. They mold. They're hard to clean. They're ugly. They look like like a teardrop or an elephant or like whatever. And I saw and noticed that my girlfriend cleaned hers every week with like a Q-tip and vinegar, which is insane. And then she used it year round because it was like this beauty skincare hack that I had like never thought of before. Didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so was inspired by both of those factors to build a product that didn't look like an elephant, was small enough to fit on an adult's nightstand, was designed to be used all year round, had features that were super easy to clean.
Hmm.
So Canopy can just get thrown in the dishwasher.
It's awesome.
And we looked at the category and thought about how all these products were made and our experience with AC products and a variety of other things. We came in and said, okay, how do we one make sure this is a really product to engineer and go through compliance. So for instance, most humidifiers are AC powered. You plug a cable in, it goes in the wall. There's no power adapter. There's no extra plug on the product, and as a result, that product costs somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 for just compliance per market it's sold in. So if You buy a humidifier that has, plug that goes straight, that has prongs that go straight into the wall. If you want to then sell that product in the US and in Canada and then in Europe, each of those markets, somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 just for compliance. Um,
Yeah.
and require a factory that has those compliance requirements for all of that. It ends up sucking. So we saw that and said, okay, we'll just put a USB-C outlet on our plug on our product. We'll run it with 5 volts. We're not going to use an AC fan. We're going to use a DC fan. DC fans are way cheaper than AC fans. They have no compliance requirements, or no region specific compliance requirements. There's a ton of compliance that goes on with that product specific to, because they're mainly used with electronics. They have to be, fire safe and all of that. But the whole product does not need to get recertified per region. And then we're using a, pre-approved UL adapter that has USB plug on one side, USB-C on the other, and it ends up being a lot cheaper. So a lot of that, we took the product and said, okay, how do we think about building a product with those things we learned along the way, and how do we work with some of our factories in our network that can build a semi-complex electronic device cost effectively and within their expertise. And that's how, we're working with a great supplier for this that has this, weird background of building, high volume, low cost plastics for Target products. And at the same time, they make electronic dartboards as their biggest owned business. And so with that, they've got an understanding of basic electronics, and they have the certifications and the ISO requirements to build electronics, but also have a huge breadth of knowledge in injection molding and high volume injection molding for a product like this.
Cool.
So that's how Canopy came in, and Aaron killed it. I can share some of the original designs that Aaron did, actually.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
For the product that once, the beautiful product we almost made that ended up on the editing room floor, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But
I'm so sorry, Aaron, for your loss.
But yeah, that's Canopy. And
yeah. So how long was that entire process?
I'm embarrassed how long it took, because Doris Dev is we are a quick moving, fast moving product machine. So from idea creation for us starting to work on it to launching it was 18 months.
Okay. I mean, that's still pretty good turnaround.
Yes, I would say if we were doing this and focusing on this more, we should have been able to do it in 5 months.
Okay. Wow.
So
yeah,
it was a bit embarrassing how long it took. But
was there any benefit to the length? Because I can imagine that you couldn't focus all of your energy on Canopy. You had other clients. So
yeah, we 72 products that in that first 12 months. So we were definitely.
So was there any benefit to actually taking that much time instead of the 5 months? Were there discoveries made that you might not have made during the 5 months?
Definitely. We made the product changed drastically. And I would say if we were working as in a client, had a client in this role who handed off the industrial design and said, go make this product, we would have made a vastly more expensive product that people probably would not have liked as much. You'll judge the sketches. The sketches are beautiful though. I think we made the product and a lot of people said and we built the prototype, and we, brought some people in who were in this, we wanted to make a better humidifier. And then we were a bunch of, nerdy bros trying to like build a humidifier for a beauty market. And or a humidifier that eventually turned into a humidifier for beauty. And I think that it was really helpful to get people in place with that vertical to see the prototype and go, it kind of doesn't look like a beauty product. Like
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah.
And so that having, that time and effort and like and enough time to have do that and hear that feedback and go, they're right. Damn it. Like, okay, let's think about this again and how do we take um, you know, input from other category like other home goods categories and stuff like that and build it into a product that's like very warm and like, just
Mm,
rounded and much it's not nearly as sharp as the original product was.
gotcha.
And I would say the original product looked sick in renders.
Yeah.
And then you get it in person and you're like, I don't see it. Like,
Hmm.
like,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you
So
got like a looks like you had gotten to the point of like a looks like prototype for this initial version and
yeah,
or
yeah, it was a looks like where it was not painted, I don't believe, but it was all white. Um, and it didn't do it.
yeah, gotcha. Yeah,
Um,
I was looking at the canopy and we just got a molecule mini, the
uh,
air purifier, and I feel like it fits very well beside that. Because right now
yes.
we have like the Honeywell humidifier next to it, and that thing is, I don't know. There's some aspiration in the design there. I can see an industrial designer with the Honeywell one being like, I want to make something really nice. There's just some decisions that I am not too crazy about, but I could
It
see.
would have looked that the sketch of that product looked really cool. That Honeywell product.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I could imagine the canopy sitting next to like the Molecule Mini and feeling very, s- you know, complimentary. Um,
The when the we had kicked off tooling right when the Molecule Mini launched, and we saw the curves, and we are like, "Damn, this is close. We are close on this curve right now." Like, I mean, it's just like this, nice spline, soft spline that goes to the top, and we're like, "Damn, we're pretty close to that curve right there." But
I mean, you're both. It's two products that you're trying to fit into a home and feel homey and feel comfortable. And there's only so many ways that you could tackle something like that. There's definitely enough of a difference where it's like, oh, that's an air purifier, or maybe it's a computer with the molecule, but like yours is like,
or a
yeah,
trash can, you never know.
yeah, exactly. But but yeah, no, I really like the canopy a lot. I'm with Chris Jenner on this one. Um, but anyway, I
we're
feel
gonna we're
like,
gonna officially end this.
yeah, I think we should officially end this. I mean, I feel like we could probably talk for another 5 hours, but
Yeah.
um, I got to get some
I'm
lunch.
Yeah, if anyone is, I'm going to add one plug. I just moved to Austin, so if anyone is in Austin, hit me up. I
Yeah.
have 3 friends here. We can hang out from a
Oh,
distance.
well, I know two people. I know an engineer from Lifetime Brands and
Oh wow.
Derek Elliott, the helicopter animator extraordinaire. Like
Oh
you should
really?
hit him up for sure. Because he's an awesome renderer and animator.
That's sick.
So,
Also,
so
actually, the renders. Oh, I'd love to hang out with him. And also, the renders that you did for Gravity Blanket have turned in that when we first met have turned into a end cap Gravity Blanket at Target. So I hope you feel proud of yourself. That's all you right there.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I need to go to my local Target and seek it out. Um,
Um,
but yeah,
okay.
man, thank you so much
This was
again.
great.
And yeah, I'm at iDraw and Receipts, and we'll see you next time.